Welcome, everybody, to the next episode of Roots to Health. I'm your host, Dr. Craig Keever, and my lovely companion and personal vegan chef, my wife, Amy. And our
Well,
co-host.
it turns from a wife to a companion. I wasn't sure about how that was going down.
And should I not forget to mention co-host?
That's right.
That's right. That's right. So, I've chosen a topic today that is maybe a little difficult for some people to talk about. Certainly was for me for a long time. It's the topic of obesity and how that's affecting us, and why it's such an important topic to tackle at this point, and has been for some time now. And the recent statistics that I've read in this country, 70% of the entire population of this country is overweight, and 40% of this country is obese.
And obesity doesn't necessarily look like what you think it looks like.
That's absolutely correct. That's for sure. We'll dive into a little bit about that in a bit. But some other statistics more relevant to my pediatric practice in the 60s, and there's not a whole lot of really good research data before the 60s, and I didn't see the actual sources for this particular point of information, but it seems reasonable that the information from the 60s indicates that about 5% of children between the ages of 2 and 19 were considered obese at that time. Compared to current statistics, approximately 20%. So we've gone up fourfold.
That's those years that you're supposed to just be able to eat a horse almost and be able to.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Our metabolism is at its best during those years, and yet we see an steadily increasing number of kids being considered obese. Well, why is this such a big deal? I mean, this is certainly, from a medical standpoint, not about fat shaming. This is about the real impact on our bodies, about the carriage of excess weight.
And yeah, it's important to just be able to talk about this, because
Absolutely.
part of the problem is that we're not talking about it.
That's correct. And I mean, it is a difficult, it's a very, very complex topic. Okay, there's no one simple answer. And so that in part makes it somewhat difficult, because you've got people on one side saying this is the right way, and on the other side, this is the right way. I don't know that anybody can say there is one right way. There's a lot of ways to help the obese and get to someplace more healthy, should they want to do that.
And the balance of, yes, love yourself right as you are, right how you are, but the balance of, but let's not be so into that we're like embracing, just eat the cake, do whatever,
right. There is definitely a balance to be had with that. So I speak about that coming from a point where not too many years ago, my body mass index, the BMI, was 41. So yeah, ultimately, obesity will cause a much higher incidence of chronic health problems, from hypertension, which can lead to heart disease. Heart disease is another one. Diabetes, strokes, cancer, all of these things are at much higher risk if your weight is at a point where you're considered obese.
And isn't it true that, you hear this, it's absolutely false, but people talk about tofu being bad for men, that it can be, leading to estrogen dominance, but fat actually carries estrogen. Is that right? As far as how it elevates that level of estrogen in a man's body by the more the more weight that they have on them. So that's more cause of.
Yes, overweight people, I think, tend to have more trouble with the effort because adipose tissue, fat tissue does produce its own estrogens. Mm-hmm. So yes, that's exactly right. So the definition of obesity, what exactly is it? Well, as I've mentioned already, and Amy's mentioned, the BMI is one critical tool in measuring our level of obesity or not. And it's been medically defined as a body mass index of over 30. What is body mass index exactly? It's a calculation that we use to kind of determine weight for height, and is this appropriate? How do we get it? Well, you basically you take your I want to say this correctly, your weight in kilograms and divide that by your height in meters. And that will give you your body mass.
Or go on a calculator like I do.
Or go on a calculator. But that's how it's calculated.
Right.
And it's actually not just weight divided by height, but for those mathematically inclined, which I'm really not, it's actually weight divided by meters squared in height. I don't know why the mathematicians put that in there, but that's what it is. So it's actually, we divide our categories up into essentially 3 sections when we're talking about BMI. A normal healthy BMI is considered between 15 and 25. When you reach over 25 to 30, you're considered in the overweight category. And when you get to over 30, then that's considered obese. The word obese has certainly a social stigma to it. That it's really just a medical classification. So having said that,
And I get that because women have such a stigma to don't gain weight at all, so maybe there is a way to reframe it and re-say it. It's just a percentage higher than what you need to be.
Yes. I can't emphasize enough that this is a medical condition and not a social stigma. And like we mentioned, I mean, it is a very complex topic. In the same way that any person, what we eat is affected by so many things: our culture, our history, our physical nature. I mean, everything.
But you're living proof that to see that BMI go down, like things changed in your body,
Things
do
do
change like that. So
Now, I would further this to say that while, yes, BMI is an important tool to use in diagnosing obesity, it is a crude tool. Okay, and why do I say that? We've talked before, I think in previous podcasts, about, as a for instance, my favorite example is Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? So you take a person who is incredibly physically fit, huge muscles on muscles, a very skinny waist, and that Arnold Schwarzenegger in his prime clearly had a body mass index greater than 30. I don't know of anybody that would have called him obese. Right? So there are limits to the term body mass index. Now, when you combine the body mass index and the number you get there with proper waist size, that becomes a different matter. So, for instance, as I mentioned, Arnold Schwarzenegger, his waist size was certainly less than half of his height. Okay, when we talk about a waist size, an appropriate waist size for a man would be about half of your height in inches. And on the flip side of that, if you got a person, your average Joe, who has a body mass index of greater than 30, but oops, our waist size is multiple inches more than half of our height, well, that becomes a much more stronger indicator of actual obesity, right? So yeah, it's good to clarify those kind of things because just to.
And why is that so important as far as the waist size? I mean, they just go.
It has to do with percent of body fat. So if your waist size is low, then your percentage of body fat, which is really what we're getting at here with the term obesity, and our bodies having just too high of a percentage of fat.
Visceral fat, especially, is really dangerous.
And visceral fat contributes more to the health problems for sure in terms of I think how that messes with our blood pressure and our hormones and probably any number of things that I'm still not yet aware of. So, causes of obesity, multifold, certainly genetics can play a role in that. Okay. But there's much more than just that. And like we do say in the plant-based world, genetics may load the gun, but nutrition pulls the trigger.
I mean, so much so that it can actually turn off certain genes to support your body better.
Exactly. That's precisely correct. Yeah.
Never knew that before I got into plant-based eating.
So yes, not only can the kinds of foods we eat tip our genetic profile into expressing certain genes that help us, it can also do that in the other way. And we eat processed garbage, and that's going to tip things in a different direction for our metabolism.
People think that they have this like insatiable appetite, but what they don't realize is they're eating the very foods that are causing that insatiable appetite. There's always addictive qualities. So.
Precisely. And there are, we've mentioned this before too, the companies that make these processed foods, many of them have specific departments designed to make their foods more cravable, which is another word for addictive, so it's a problem. It's a real problem here in this country.
Definitely cheese has that.
Yeah, for sure. So another base cause of obesity, if we're looking at things to kind of try to single out, is lifestyle patterns. So to include our diet, as we've talked about already, our food choices do make a difference. Our exercise choices do make a difference. In my own story, I got to the place where as I mentioned, my BMI was 41. I never looked in the mirror and thought, wow, you're obese, but that's significantly over 30. In fact, that's pretty close to, I would have to read more statistics on this, but pretty close to morbid obesity. I never saw myself as that big, so there's a lot of perceptions that go on. And as this country has become bigger, the public perception of what is acceptable has changed, because
it's almost being touted as like you're kind if you just say, hey, this is good to be this way, or this is good to feel this way. And nothing that we're saying is about not loving yourself.
Exactly.
But to have this thing to the point where like just do what you want to do, feel what you want to feel, like that's a dangerous way to live.
It is a dangerous way to live. It's kind of a part and parcel of kind of the American way. Yeah. I want to do what I want to do, and I'm going to do it.
Here. It does not happen to this degree in other countries.
That's correct. Although there is a worldwide trend as well towards ADC.
Just everything with Americans is about indulgence, and that's not to be so negative, but it's like it's just that indulgence of like I want what I want, I want to do what I want to do, and definitely is happening worldwide.
That's right.
I think because of our influence, maybe.
Well, possibly, quite possibly. It's certainly related to, I think, the amount of processed food in our diet.
Right.
And that's kind of what I was getting at with thinking about, the increase in childhood obesity from the 1960s at about less than 5% to now nearly 20%. And that's in large part, I think, related to all these processed foods, which all these processed foods are certainly infiltrating markets throughout the world. And that's what we're seeing as the influence towards
on the rise for children. And cholesterol. I can't get over 9-year-olds getting tested for high cholesterol now.
Yep. And another cause at the base of the obesity epidemic, food deserts.
This is a big deal. This is close to my heart.
It's a very big deal. If you don't have access within a certain distance of your home to actual healthy foods, the concept of food deserts was not even on my radar until a nurse practitioner that I now have working with me talked about that, and that's one of her passions and whatnot. And you can be right smack dab in the middle of the USA or a big city and be right in the middle of a food desert.
It's its own level of racism in areas.
It is.
It happens all over places.
And the biggest problem is very often in the many neighborhoods there's no grocery store that carries good foods. All you've got are these convenience stores, and you've got people living near them that don't have the kind of access to transportation.
Right.
And so all they can do is get food from a convenience store. And you and I both know that ain't no way to live.
That's why we pack our food.
That's why we pack our food. That's why traveling can be such a difficult time on plant-based eating.
Yeah. You really got to dig in your heels and try to figure out, how to do it. Cause
You bet.
it's not hard, but it's just something to kind of figure out.
And along those lines with food deserts, the other thing in that area would be marketing. Marketing for all these processed foods has an impact on a large number of people. It's kind of a difficult thing to overcome because they do make these foods uber tasty.
Yes.
And craveable. And then very convenient.
Yes.
They're nice, pretty packaged, and easy to get.
I've always said I've always been a sucker for marketing because it's just
So other factors involved, of course, psychological factors. I've been guilty of this too numerous times to count. Is stress eating. Yeah. Things like that, or emotional eating. That's a very common thing that will contribute potentially to obesity, as well as other medical factors. Now, I will say as a pediatrician, when I look at medical factors causing obesity, they're fairly rare, okay? Like hormone disorders and maybe not quite as rare are medications that cause weight gain, all right? But I can tell you that it's very real when the parent starts to think about my kid may be having a trouble with obesity and we need to figure this out. The very first thing, and probably rightly so, the very first thing you want to rule out is a medical basis for it. And so instantly we're wanting all kinds of blood work and let's figure out what's the problem. Sadly, it's just not that simple.
Yeah.
There are very good labs to have, a good panel to make sure that many things are where they need to be and we can work with the things that are not. But I don't often find an answer in the medical realm.
Which is why lifestyle medicine is so critical, because it's saying, what do you have around you? What are you doing? What are your patterns? All those different things.
For sure. So the next thing we'll kind of move on to is what are the health risks associated with obesity? And I think we've kind of hit some of those with the cardiovascular disease, diabetes. We did not yet mention sleep apnea. And as Amy had mentioned, certain cancers are all definitely increased risk with all of those things with excess weight. Mental health also impacts obesity, depression and anxiety, and as we kind of mentioned, the social stigma of this will also have an impact. So now I'd like to kind of turn and look at approaches to prevention and treatment, because to further on with my story that I covered pretty well in podcast number 1 of this series. But having come from a place where my body mass index was 41, and currently I'm in the overweight category, my body mass index.
No one would look at you and ever think that,
Yeah. But my body mass index is now right around 27. So, I guess I would like to expound on that just a little bit right now, in that I use, as we mentioned, the tool of body mass index and the tool of waist size to kind of guide me on my journey. And what do I mean by that? Well, some of my issues, including high blood pressure and high blood sugar, are very related to the amount of excess fat I have in my body. And as I've experienced so far, the closer I get to what's presumed to be my ideal weight based on body mass index and waist size, the better control I get of those things. Even to the point of just a few months ago, I was still carrying 10 pounds more than about 2 or 3 months ago, 10 pounds more than I'm carrying right now. And I just couldn't get my blood sugar to drop significantly below 140 or maybe into 130s, right? Just 10 pounds later, and I'm down to below 200 pounds now. And all of a sudden, my sugars are 115 to 120.
And you recover if you ever had something that's a little bit more decadent. It just seems like
Right.
a snack pack.
Right. So I've often said in this journey, because interestingly, when I first started this journey in earnest, I thought, I don't want to lose too much weight. I don't want to look like an Auschwitz victim, right? And so I set this goal in my mind of 220 pounds, which seemed like a very reasonable goal. I thought this is a good thing. And I talked with my lifestyle medicine doctor about that, and she didn't say much about it at that point. But later then, when I had reached my goal of 220 pounds and started to reassess and figure out what is my next goal, she said, I wondered if you were going to be satisfied with a weight that was still considered in the obese range.
I was surprised you wanted to still be obese. Something I
Yeah.
was like,
Yeah. And that goes to show, how our public perception, the general public perception has become a lot different.
That's where this is a different type of, healing or a different process in Western medicine, because you are coming to someone and saying, are you wanting to change this?
That's right.
And it was such a loving thing for her to do, but you had to be in the right headspace and the right type of person to say, okay, I hear you. Because if you
Very
can't
much
hear it, you can't.
Very much so. This is very much akin to or similar to an alcoholic. You can tell an alcoholic all day long, you need to quit drinking. You're an alcoholic. It's going to kill you. It won't make a bit of difference until something inside turns and says, ooh, alcohol is killing me. And then it becomes a different story. Well, in the same way, that's kind of what happened to me with food. And so how do we address this issue in nutrition for obesity? And I can tell you my journey, and I can tell you the things that have worked for me. There are many ways to attack this. And I'm not going to sit here and say, oh my gosh, this is the only way to do it. But many, many people have success with a whole food plant-based diet.
yes.
It doesn't get any simpler than that.
I mean, I will just plug this little book. Or it's not a little book at all, but for those of you listening, How Not to Diet by Dr. Greger. And it's full of just little tips and tricks, even if you are plant-based and you're like, well, I just can't get the needle to, move. So yeah, it's really,
Very much so.
it's a way to not starve while you're losing.
Right. And the other beautiful thing about this is that it's a journey. Okay? This is not something that when I started this journey almost 5 years ago, that I clicked on and all of a sudden, boom, everything happened right. Okay? This is a journey of test and measure.
Yes.
Very much test and measure. So I would change my way of eating, and at first it was a big change, okay? Because the first thing I had to wrap my brain around was everything I could not eat anymore.
Right.
Right? I can't eat meat. I can't eat dairy. I can't eat processed food.
People's faces after you were out.
I know, right?
Oh, wow.
So yeah, the processed food, the sugar, and the oil. Lose all those 5 things. Well, I'm the first to sit here and tell you I did never do it perfectly.
Oh, me too.
Yeah, right?
I always say I did it bad before I did it good.
That's it.
Yeah.
You But I did it well enough for long enough that at some point when I really got the picture, because it took a while to get that picture.
For sure.
Right? And it took your assistance because you've been plant-based.
A whole different way.
Yeah.
Too. It's like it's a whole different. It didn't have to be hard, but it's a different way.
Yeah. And once that got triggered in me, then my weight loss really started in earnest. Now, here's the other difficult thing about the weight loss journey with this. For me, it was a slow process, right?
Yeah.
2 to 4 pounds a month, usually closer to 2. All right. that seems very often very unsatisfying.
There is a level of emotional maturity that has to take place with this, because you have to go, okay, I'm doing this and I'm doing this. And so there has to be a level of that where you go, I can't get so fixated on those numbers, just
Yes.
be chipped
Well,
away.
and as well, I think the term lifestyle is very apropos
Yes.
because unlike previous times that I tried to lose weight and go on a diet,
Yeah, not a diet.
right? This is not a diet. This is a lifestyle change that I'm committing to.
Do you feel like now that if someone said like, oh, do you hunger, like, are you just craving meat? Are you craving cheese? Does that even enter your mind now?
It really doesn't.
It really doesn't for me either.
I mean, it took me, honestly, I can kind of remember having some of those cravings probably about the first year and a half. But since everything has changed,
to think about it.
I don't. I feel so much better. I move so much better.
But when you go into a restaurant and you see somebody eating a big steak, is there any kind of part of you that's like,
There's really no pull for me to do that.
I do know that like cheese was always something for me that I was like, oh man. But the ethical side of this really was the kicker for me to be able to go, okay, that's important to me. So, but I just wish people understood it won't always feel like this. It will
Right.
always feel like you've got this addictive kind of addiction going.
For real. And at some point, the meter really changed for me, and it was no longer about what I can't eat. It became what I can eat.
And we're so much more foodies, I feel like now, than there's so many more variations of what we eat. And that is the one thing I'll say about having that decadent meal once a week or whatever is, if you need to have something that tastes like fettuccine Alfredo, I can do that. You can do that. And so it's not like you're ever going to not have those familiar tastes. It's just, you're going to do it with plant-based.
Precisely. Yeah. I mean, and having you around to, bring about some of those comfort foods of old, only done from a plant-based viewpoint, has been very, very helpful.
Which is
Very.
well, I'm glad. I mean, it's exciting to get people in front of the food because they have this perception of like grass and cardboard.
Yep. That was, we've talked about that before. I used to think that, before I became plant-based, I used to just think, well, I'm going to be eating salads all the time and grass and cardboard and never be satisfied. And nothing is further from the truth.
There's a lot of things that don't look like they're vegetables at all that are vegetables in your
That's right.
meals.
So in terms of other things involved in the treatment of obesity, physical activity, and this fits so well with the whole lifestyle medicine principles and pillars of health. I didn't realize, again, just like when I looked in the mirror and didn't see a BMI of 41, I didn't look in the mirror and see a sedentary guy. Right? I'd always been, I would say, moderately athletic, certainly not one that excelled in athletics, but I did enjoy being active. I used to ride my bicycle a lot, take walks, and any number of things. I was a football player and a wrestler in junior high and high school, and baseball as a younger kid, all those things. But physical activity is a really big deal. And it wasn't until I sat down in front of Dr. Morgan, my lifestyle medicine doctor, that I realized how sedentary I had become, because we started talking about what, in terms of my lifestyle, how was I going to change this aspect of it? How was I going to become more physically active? And so we sat down and we kind of talked about some numbers of, the easiest thing is walking and just getting steps. That's a good way to start. How many steps she's saying to me, how many steps can you give me every day, 5 days a week? And I was looking at these things and thinking, well, I could probably get that most of the time. No, she said, no. We're not talking about 80% of the time or 50% of the time. We're talking about
100%.
100%. And what that came down to at that point in time.
Clear.
Yeah, very clear. And that came down to, at that point in time, 5,000 steps a day, 5 days a week. Yeah. Okay. And there are some people that can't do that.
Yeah.
Okay. So does that mean you're sunk? Well, no. You start where you're at. But I will say that the scientific evidence points to the amount of exercise that truly makes a big impact on our physical health and getting in physical shape is 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week of something that elevates your heart rate, whether it's walking, biking, swimming,
Right.
anything you enjoy doing, do it for 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week, and that will really begin to make an impact. But if you can't do that, start where you're at.
Well, like the lady that talked about weight training, she said, if you're not doing anything, just picking up this 1 little gallon thing will be heavy for you. That is your max, or that is what animal analogies. But don't try to eat the elephant all at once. Just
Right.
a little bit at a time.
Yeah.
Just try to figure out how to do that,
That's right.
because that will get overwhelming.
It will. So those were the two biggest things I think that I did in changing from a BMI of 41 to currently 27. And still working on, it's all about test and measure. So I'm still working on getting down those last 15 to 20 pounds. Another thing, another category of approaches to treatment of obesity, behavioral changes to include mindful eating. I got and am still really in the habit of wolfing everything down. I eat fast, and I've always done that. I used to blame all this on residency and that I had to learn how to do that as a resident, but no, it was there before that. And combined with during residency, there was no time to sit down and enjoy a meal, and the food that was there was all processed garbage. That's when my weight gain started in earnest.
Well, and I know we're going to be talking about this more in depth, but just the fact that like the TV's on and just not being present with, oh, this really tastes good, and just taking a pause and really focusing on the food.
That's right. And I think that's going to be a topic of a future podcast. And so we'll get to that at that episode. But tracking your habits, just kind of getting a sense of where you're at and what habits are good for you and what are not.
Tracking your food.
And tracking your food. Yeah.
That's a wake-up call.
That's a wake-up call. A chronometer, as we've talked about before on the podcast, there are a number of apps out there. We have found chronometer to work very well for us. But just doing that, and even if you don't do it every day, I think I went through a period of several months where we pretty much did it every day. And I haven't done it for a while, but when I get backed up against a wall, that's probably the next thing I need to go to if I'm not getting results on my health like I want with the blood pressure, with the blood sugar and weight gain or whatever.
Well, and it's also helpful to just pull it up like, hey, what's in a half a cup of, steamed rice? I mean, like, what's the calorie count? What's the fat grams? Like, just something real easy. And I still say the Walmart ad was really nice too, because you can look at the backs of the whatever the label is,
Labels.
look something up really quick.
You bet.
Yeah.
Sleep is another thing that has a real impact on weight management. So that's important if you're having difficulty sleeping. Trying to figure out where's the problem here and take care of that as best we can.
That's a catch-22, because if your nutrition's off, you will have trouble sleeping.
Right.
And so, you may need it, and it's almost exacerbating everything else, but to be able to get that nutrition right is critical.
Yep.
And exercise.
And exercise.
Affect that as well.
Yeah, all that feeds together, literally. And then you throw on top of that, which we've talked a little bit about on previous podcasts, the gut microbiome.
Yeah, that's huge.
It's huge in terms of, how your body's dealing with all these calories, and the germs in your intestinal tract will either help or hinder.
And it is driving your immune system.
It's driving your immune system and your metabolism. So, the quicker we can get to a whole food plant-based diet and increase the fiber in our diet, because that's one of the biggest deals in plant-based nutrition, is healing that gut microbiome. And the more healthy bugs that we get in our intestinal tract, the better everything gets. So
And
you're
eliminating things that are causing the bad backup of bad bugs,
precisely.
because they can really take over your good.
Yes. There are some medical interventions that in extreme cases are needed. bariatric surgery and prescription medications. Needless to say, those are not things to just jump to right away. And I don't think anybody that's going that route is jumping to those things right away.
And I have seen it change lives.
Yes.
Some,
There are.
it definitely can turn things around.
Yeah, they can be very, very effective in the right person. But it's something to be pursued with much thought and
changing habits. I mean, it's not
Yes.
just about a diet as well. It's
That's
about
right.
changing your whole mindset.
That's exactly right. I mean, this
So
concept.
I've seen that too, where they go right back to what
Yeah,
the way they
yeah. The concept of a pill for an ill, and okay, I'm going to go to my doctor and get my obesity taken care of with whatever. Well, you're right. If you don't change the lifestyle, it's coming back.
Yeah.
That's just kind of sadly how it works. But at the end of the day, one size does not fit all. I've been very, very blessed in my journey that, for the most part, I've done this without a lot of intense medical intervention.
Right.
It really was and has been so far for me a process of just changing my mindset.
And if someone's out there at a different state or somewhere where they really need help, like get that provider on your side that's a lifestyle medicine nutritionist, doctor, because it really was helpful, even with you being a physician, to have that guidance of someone just dosing you down on your medicine.
Truly.
Because the doctor before this was like, not really interested.
Yeah, I had an internal medicine physician for a number of years that as I started to improve, and lose weight and things were going the right way, I wanted to start coming off my medicines. And he just had no interest in that.
You really need that,
Yeah.
I feel like that guidance.
Yeah.
The whole team. Like that's our goal, is to be able to form a whole team of lifestyle medicine coaches, culinary side, the physician, all.
Sure. So yeah, and another thing that I've failed to mention is the kind of the role of society and policy in all of this. It's one of the biggest problems I see is our school lunches.
Oh, it's heartbreaking.
It's heartbreaking. The problem is all these big companies, meat, dairy, egg, have all infiltrated the government to a point where they're now dictating to us what needs to be in the school lunches. As a pediatrician, I have to write notes to the school
So ridiculous.
to say, please don't give this kid dairy.
I did it for my kids, and it's like, they stayed on that worse than anything I've ever seen.
Yep.
And they're subsidizing. So, when we would school, the lunch ladies would make us homemade meals. Not anymore. Like all that stuff. I mean, not saying it's not going on somewhere, but I'm just saying subsidizing, burger joints and things like that. It's like, it's hard as a mom when you really want to bring your kids a packed lunch and they can still get it at school. They
Sure.
can still get around it. So it's frustrating.
Well, in closing, I'd like to just rehash just a second here that obviously, there's so many facets to treating obesity, and it's just a really complex issue that will take time and continues to take time and forethought and planning, and but it can be tackled.
And don't let the words get in your way of your own body's healing, because once that momentum started for you, it was like just you were just off the ground running.
And I'd like to say, too, that this is really not an issue that's a question of willpower.
Right.
All right? There's nothing that anybody needs to feel guilty about or, feel like I just can't do it. I don't have enough strength.
Yeah.
It really takes a monumental effort
Yes.
to change a mindset. Because some of these things that feed into the obesity epidemic are so innate and so cultural and so personal
Yes.
that to
This was my mom's recipe. It was my grandma's recipe. It's like, absolutely. And holidays, all those things, they do come together, and it is very,
very much
personal.
Very personal. So as a small tip for anybody starting to struggle with this or go on this journey, just pick one thing.
Yes.
One thing, whether that's I'm not going to eat this thing anymore. Not a whole category of things, just thing.
Right.
Or I'm going to get a little more active. I'm going to take a walk.
Right.
Doesn't matter how long it is, but just pick one thing and start that journey.
Well, the two things I would mention is Physicians Committee has an app called the 21-Day Kickstart, and you can just get it and download it for free. And it's really a great guidance program. And then we're also doing classes with Food for Life. If on Physicians Committee, if you look up in your state, you can find someone who's doing it online or in person, and that's what I do as well. And so trying to find a class that you can get in, and I mean, like I'm doing a class tonight, and it is so cool to see everybody come together that didn't know each other, and they have instant community, and they're instantly helping each other.
Yes.
The energy is palpable. So
Yes.
get with your community, find a class, find something that you can do that will help you just break it down where you don't feel alone, because I think that's a big part of it.
It is. Yeah, community is huge. That was a big part of my journey. If you listen to my podcast on how I've gotten where I am now. Well, thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
All righty, take care.